I just want to kind of be mindful of the time and welcome you guys all to actually our final faculty FaceTime of the summer. And we'll leave it open for people to come and join us, but just very excited to have you all join us for this time with Dr. Duane Watson and to be facilitated by Alyssa Aloyo. And so I'd love to start with just everyone getting to know one another. And maybe Duane, could you start with introducing yourself?
Sure. I am Duane Watson. I am the Associate Dean for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and I am also a faculty member in Psychology and Human Development.
And Alyssa.
Yes, I'm Alyssa Aloyo, a program coordinator in the Provost Office for Inclusive Excellence. I'm also a second year Master's of Ed in Learning, Diversity, and Urban Studies student. And yeah, I'm excited to be here and I'm grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you. Brenda.
Sorry, I was typing. Hi, everyone. I'm Brenda McKenzie, Associate Professor of the Practice in Leadership Policy and Organizations.
Thank you. Anna Kate.
Hi, I am going to be a first-year student in just a couple weeks in the English Language Learners program.
Well, thank you for joining us. Catherine Davis.
Yeah, how's it going? Like Anna, I'm also in the English Language Learners program, and I actually started my classes at Peabody in May, but I'll be moving up to Nashville soon. So hopefully maybe see y'all.
Welcome. Cece.
Hi, I'm a second year PhD student from Department of Teaching and Learning. I'm interested in finding out more about Dr. Watson's idea because I saw that he had a class about second language acquisition, so I want to find out more about it.
Thank you. And let's see, Kyle.
Hi, I'm Kyle Dooley. I work in development and alumni relations, so I've been hopping onto these weekly to hear about what's happening in Peabody so I can share that with our alumni when I'm chatting with them out in the virtual road now.
Thank you. Heidi. Okay, maybe we'll come back. Nicole.
Hi, Nicole Joseph, Assistant Professor of Math Education and Teaching and Learning.
Thank you for coming. Oscar.
Hi everyone, Oscar Guzman. I'm a rising second year in the Human Development Counseling Program, and I also get to actually work alongside Alyssa in the Provost Office for Inclusive Excellence as their GA.
Thank you. Seven.
Hi, I am visiting assistant professor at the Development of Teaching and Learning. My area is math teaching.
Thank you. Meaghan, I feel like I skipped you.
I'm here. Meaghan Mundy, Assistant Dean of Student Empowerment, Engagement, and Development. Thanks.
Thanks. Sharon.
Sharon Shields, Senior Associate Dean here at Peabody College.
Andy.
Hi everyone, I'm Yanni, a rising sophomore majoring in HLD. I've joined a couple of the Friday chats previously. I've been learning a lot, so I'm excited to hear more about the professor studying languages and all interesting aspects.
Thank you. Andy.
Okay, it's me. I'm an incoming student to IEPM program, and I'm very excited to see all you guys. Hello, Nico. I love you very much.
Thank you. Yuki.
Hi, this is Yuki. I'm a rising senior and I'm a cognitive studies major. And I took the intro to linguistics class with Dr. Duane like a year ago.
Thank you for joining us. And it looks like Heidi, do we want to give it another try? I know you said your computer's being a little weird. Okay, well, we might, if Heidi feels like she can join in, we'll have her join in later. But I'd like to turn it over to Alyssa.
My fault. You'd think that after so many months of being on Zoom that I would be remembering of when I mute myself, but here we are. Can everyone hear me? We're all good moving forward? Okay, great. So let me just fix my screen so I could see Duane. So great, like I said, I'm very excited to be here today and have this opportunity to facilitate this conversation and also learn more about Dr. Watson as well. So Duane, if I'd like to give, with this first question, an opportunity to for you to kind of give an overview of who you are and the work that you do, and tell us about what inspired you to do your research and become a linguist and cognitive scientist.
Sure. But first, thanks for having me do this. I hope it's fun. We'll see how it goes. So my work is, so I'm a psycholinguist, sort of a combination of a psychologist and a linguist. And one thing I've learned in about 20 years of doing this is that no one knows what that is or what we do. I was on a plane once next to a guy, and I told him I was a psycholinguist, and he's like, "Oh, so do you like analyze people's personalities based on how they write?" And I was like, "No, that sounds way more interesting than what I actually do." So I am interested in the cognitive and brain processes that underlie how people use language, basically. So how do we pick the right words? How do we articulate words so that other people can understand us? What are the processes that allow us to read fluently or not fluently? So my research spans a lot of different domains. So I look at things like speech. So we have people come into the lab, we have them describe things, and we just measure what they say because we're interested in how they say things. We also do experiments with kids, looking at how quickly they can read through a sentence by measuring where they fixate as they read. So, and so I guess the second part of the question is, how did I get interested in this? And you probably wouldn't be surprised to hear that I had no idea what linguistics was or what psycholinguistics was when I went to college. Like, no one grows up wanting to do that, for a few people. So I was originally interested in becoming a doctor. And it was around my freshman year when grades were coming out that I'm like, you know, I'm not so interested in being a doctor. I just was not interested in that curriculum. And so I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. And I ended up taking a linguistics class because my roommate was taking it. And it knocked me out. I loved it. I loved learning about different dialects. I loved learning about how people use language. I learned lots of things, that all languages are equal. All languages are systematic. There's no languages that are easier or harder. And so I got interested in language because it seemed like kind of like a mathematical way to describe human behavior. And so I still think that we can learn a lot about what humanity is by looking at language.
Thank you. And I also want to note as well for folks on the call that if you have any affirmations or questions or things that you'd want to maybe consider for guiding this conversation, please feel free to use the chat. And I will be sure to be checking the chat as well. So Duane, when we were talking in preparation for our conversation today, you noted that you're in a field that doesn't necessarily reflect identity, but that you are also, or you've been outspoken about often being the only person of color and Black man in most rooms in your field. So in what ways do you carry those experiences into your work, and how do you stay grounded?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I sort of feel like it's constantly learning how to do that. So in the area of cognitive science, cognitive neuroscience, there's not many Black researchers. There's not many Native American, Latinx researchers. And so quite literally, when I go to this economics conference, and I'm now president of the society, we have about 4,000 members. I can count the number of Black people I see on my hand. I mean, and we all know each other, and we all get beers. So it's really, it's something that I've sort of have navigated for a while. And it's, to be honest, it's something I got used to in grad school. So almost no diversity. I went to MIT Brain and Cognitive Sciences for my PhD, and it was not a particularly woke department, and it was not a particularly diverse department. And so, I feel like I sort of learned early on to navigate spaces in a way where I felt comfortable. One thing that helped me was sort of using my friends and family as a way to kind of build a support network that I didn't necessarily get in academic spaces. And so now, as someone who's senior, I feel like, you know, no one can do anything to me really anyway, except for like on grant panels. One of my goals is to try to create a more welcoming space. And so one thing that I've done with some colleagues is create a scientific society called the Spark Society. You can go to sparksociety.org and make a donation if you like. It's meant to increase the numbers of underrepresented minoritized groups in the brain and cognitive sciences. And we've set up a Facebook forum group for people to ask questions about applying to grad school. We've set up a mentorship network. We're setting up a thing called Reviewer Zero, where underrepresented minorities can get feedback on grants and papers before they get sent out to journals from people who have training in their area. So so I feel like right now I'm trying to do work to kind of help folks so that they don't have the kind of experiences I had going through graduate school.
Thank you. And congratulations on your recent appointment to Associate Dean for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion as well. Just a round of applause for that recent appointment. This question is really for you and Hasina, maybe just to give us more background into Peabody's Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So could the both of you please share with us about Peabody's Office of EDI, your roles, and the opportunities that you see to enact change?
Yeah, well, Hasina, do you want to go first, or should I? Okay, so the goal of the EDI office is really to create a more inclusive community and to give members of the community the tools to do that themselves as well. So in my role as Associate Dean, I'm sort of a touch point for faculty in terms of helping with creating an inclusive classroom, you know, getting feedback on ideas for curricular instruction. This fall, we're hoping to have a faculty working group that will actually be a sort of a professional development group for sort of helping making our classes better and more inclusive. We're also in the process of doing a syllabus review. So we've got tons and tons of syllabi in Peabody, and we've got a team going through them. The team, me and Hasina, going through them and sort of cataloging, you know, where the gaps are, where are we doing sort of a good job, and where we could do a little bit more work. And so now I'll turn it over to Hasina. Oh, I think Hasina might have froze.
Yeah, she looks.
Yeah, yes, my internet, now that everybody is back in school, is not what it once was. So I apologize for that. I think as Duane mentioned, I'm more student facing and also staff. I mean, I think one of the things we just recently did an EDI report, and really we need to better support our staff in terms of being able to have programs and activities around equity, diversity, and inclusion topics specifically catered towards them. And I think that is one of the things that we hope to accomplish this year. You know, we really love student feedback, and this series was actually created from student feedback of wanting to have conversations with faculty, particularly around issues of equity, diversity, inclusion. And so, you know, we hope to continue to have programming that does that, right? That supports this interactions between student, faculty, and staff, like faculty FaceTime, like Dean's Diversity Lectures, but not just Dean's Diversity Lectures, but how can we have lunchtime conversations before and after to talk about the ideas that are presented and how we can incorporate those ideas into what we do here at Peabody. So it's like, to take our programming to the next level is really what we hope to do, is not just have engaging speakers and programs, but to take the things that we learn from those speakers and programs and really work together to create change at Peabody to make it a more inclusive environment. I would welcome ideas and suggestions from anybody, so please do feel free to reach out. I think, as Duane said, we're, you know, trying to work on kind of those curricular pieces to make classrooms more inclusive. I think, you know, with the kind of resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, we really are thinking about ways to incorporate anti-racism workshops, book clubs, other ideas, both with Meaghan and the Office of Student Engagement and with other campus partners to make those more available to faculty, students, and staff. So that's one of our big projects for this upcoming year, because we realize that it's not just like these different specific topics, but really anti-racism as a like primary topic that we really have to adjust and wrestle with in our college. And so finding ways to do that collectively is what we hope to do. So thank you for letting me answer that question.
Of course. No, thank you, Duane and Hasina, for that information. And I want to echo what Brenda said in the chat of, that notion of applying theory and research to practice through having, expanding programming and ensuring that there is that progression from talking about things conceptually or in theory and then learning how to put that into practice collectively and also individually. I think that, that's what I'm hearing from the opportunities that you're saying that you have as the team in the Office of EDI for Peabody. So thank you for having that emphasis. That definitely is something that relates to, I believe, what we're intending and trying to do in the Provost Office for Inclusive Excellence as well. But moving forward to Duane, about this next question is really about your experiences going into where you are now. We understand that two essential aspects of succeeding as a student are benefiting from the expertise of supportive supervisors and guidance from invested mentors. Of course, those words can be interchangeable, but we also know that the impact of either can be vastly different as well. So can you speak to some of your experiences with mentors and supervisors and your experiences as a mentor and supervisor? I encourage you to focus on times of challenge or tension that might have influenced growth or lessons learned.
Yeah, sure. So, one thing that's, I think, been very useful for me is to sort of separate the idea, and this doesn't work for everyone, but for me it's worked, separating the idea of a mentor and a supervisor. Sometimes those folks are the same person, sometimes they're not. And so that's one thing that I found. The other is I often break up my mentorship needs into sections, right? So a research mentor, a teaching mentor, a life experience mentor. And that's been successful. That's been good for me because, it's impossible to find someone who has expertise in all of those things. In terms of thinking of challenges I faced, so going back to my grad school days, it was very difficult to find someone who had the exact same experiences that I've had going, navigating through all of academics, basically. I remember having a conversation with someone who was on my committee, a faculty member, and we were talking about going on the job market. And this person said, well, it'll be easy for you. I mean, you're a minority, so you'll definitely get a job somewhere. And I'm like, A, that's not true, but B, even if I do get a job, I have to sort of prove myself more, right? I have to work harder to show that I didn't just get this job because I'm a minority. And the committee member said, no, that doesn't happen. People aren't going to think that. And a couple of weeks later, we were having a research conversation about someone's work. And the same person on my committee said, well, their work's terrible. They only got that job because, and then they stopped. It was a person of color. They stopped and they looked at me and they said, oh my God, you're right. So like kind of a light bulb, like I got to see the whole transformation of saying, something that was kind of outrageous to them having this sort of epiphany. And so, that person on my committee, I think actually that was a transformational moment for them. They went on to actually do a lot of EDI work. I don't think it was just that conversation. I think it was over the course of many conversations, a lot of EDI work in that department. But that person couldn't necessarily speak to my own needs, trying to navigate the cognitive and brain sciences as a Black person, right? And so I had to find mentorship in other spaces. One was I had a my roommate was she was a Black physics PhD at Harvard, first Black woman to get a PhD from the Harvard physics department, and we had an incredible support system. We're still really good friends. She's at Duke now. And so finding those other spaces for support has been really helpful for me. And I found as I've gone through my career that sort of my mentorship needs have changed. So going into administration, I have a mentor back at Illinois who has done that, and I can bounce ideas off. Doing work for scientific societies, I have another mentor who's done a lot of work in that space. And so being strategic and finding these different mentors has been very helpful for me, and has really influenced how I view my own mentorship of students and other folks who are sort of coming up. I feel like I'm in sort of a unique space, especially in my field, to kind of help people. I mean, I get random tweets and messages from students of color in the cognitive sciences with random questions because they don't have anyone in their department to talk to. And so, you know, it's a bit of an extra burden, but, you know, it's a burden that I'm willing to take on just because, you know, I feel like it's my responsibility at this point.
Thank you. I also want to open up just a few minutes if anyone in any other participants have questions or thoughts that they would like to share to guide our conversation forward.
So I might jump in here and ask, like, Nicole and Brenda, like, what about your mentorship styles and other things that you might want to add to what Duane shared?
Go ahead, Brenda, I'll let you go.
Oh, thanks, Nicole. Sorry, I'm eating my lunch. I don't want you all to have to watch me eat. That's why my video's been off. You know, I think the thing that I would echo from Duane is not one person can meet all of your needs. And seeking out mentorship, sponsorship, connections, relationships with people in lots of different arenas. So Duane, I loved your example of your roommate as being someone that you've tapped into also in that mentoring role. Like sometimes I feel like we think mentors are supposed to be these people up on pedestals or who are further advanced in our careers, but people we've gone through our programs with or students who we teach can also play mentorship roles. And so I think really looking at this idea of mentorship more broadly and recognizing that you need multiple people for multiple aspects.
First, I'll just say I just made a donation, Duane, to society, to the society you founded. Thanks for doing that work. I mean, it wasn't a whole bunch of money, but it's something.
We'll take it. Thank you very much.
But I think, to me, it's already been said, you have to have multiple people in your life that can mentor you. And, you know, I also think it's important to get someone in your circle that can just like tell you the truth. You know what I mean by when I say the truth? You know, someone that's not going to sugarcoat it, but tell you straight up, you know, what needs to change or whatever. I mean, of course, you know, they will also tell you what's going well or whatever, but this is such an interesting space to navigate, this thing called higher ed in the ivory tower, you know. So part of that, I guess I'll say this, my mom is one of those people who tells the truth, you know, to me. But there's also some other professors that I have in my life that are, you know, they're just there to keep me on the straight and narrow, because you can get quite egos, like all kinds of things. And I guess I'll just stop there. My recommendation and advice is make sure you have somebody that's going to tell you the truth and keep you in check.
and just to add to that, I think it's good to find that person. At least for me, it's been good to find that person in academics. So my PhD advisor is that person. Like if he thinks this has been good and bad, but if he thinks something is terrible, he'll, like, if I give him a bad talk, he'll write me. He's like, "What happened with that talk, man? That was awful." And I've just gotten used to it, but it's good to get that feedback. You don't want people to sugarcoat things. So I found it good to get. I have a mentor who tells you the truth in academics, but then also in my own personal life. And for me, that's my uncle. I go to him for advice, and he lays it out for me.
But when you know that it's coming from a space of love and trust, you know what I'm saying? Like, your PhD advisor is invested in you. So while it may be hard, it's also something that you can, you know what I'm saying, take, because you know that that's coming from a place of, like, investment. He really cares. So that makes it, a little bit easy to be like, "Oh yeah, it was a little raggedy." That talk was a little raggedy, right? So, it is hard. Don't you think, Duane and Brenda, to build those kinds of trusting relationships with people? It doesn't happen overnight. Go ahead, Duane, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say it really is hard. And, a lot of it depends on sort of style too. Like, I know people, like, I was sort of fine with my PhD advisor being direct. Like, at first I was a little shocked, and I just got used to it. And I'm like, he does it because he cares. But there are other folks who that does not work, and they left the lab. They're like, "I don't need to put up with this." And I think that's fine. But you need to find someone who you kind of gel with in order to make it a successful mentor-mentee relationship.
No, thank you for that really rich insight into a topic that is very nuanced as well. As I also want to point to what Brenda included in the chat as well about being a white, cisgender, able-bodied woman and feeling, having that responsibility to be a mentor and advocate for people from marginalized with marginalized identities, and not having that expectation for other colleagues who also serve as mentors. And I think that that's a really important nuance to identify and also honor. So I'm wondering, Brenda, if you want to maybe speak to that a little bit more.
Well, I think we've certainly seen a lot over the last couple of years about the taxation that we put on our faculty of color, in particular around mentorship, and expecting them to be the voice all of the time. And we have to stop that. I can't completely understand an experience of a student of color, but I can still be a mentor and an advocate in ways that can help navigate the system and help to also work to dismantle some of those things in the system, right? And so I believe pretty strongly in the fact that I shouldn't always send a Black student to a Black faculty member for mentorship, as one example. So, and I think more of us have become more vocal about that, particularly this summer with everything that has happened with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and the many other Black people who have been murdered, and the need for us to bring change and to recognize our responsibility and roles in that process.
Thank you, Brenda. I see that Taylor has asked a question about how do you go about asking someone to be your mentor or sponsor? And I know I'm the student facilitator, but I really resonate with what Dr. Joseph said about finding people who will tell you the truth, and I can relate to that because that's the first thing that I did when I got to Vanderbilt's campus a year ago. Was I was like, all right, let me get plugged in and find out who's going to tell me the landscape of this place, what I need to know, not just as a student, but also someone who is a part of the staff here. So that was my criteria when I was talking to folks, was like, hey, I need someone who's going to be honest with me. Is that you? And then however they reacted was how I knew if we were going to be able to have, that kind of relationship. But I do also resonate with what you were saying, Dr. Joseph, about it taking time as well. And even if, starting on that foot of like, sharing the truth, there still is that vulnerability that's a part of it that needs to be navigated as well. But Duane, I'm wondering if maybe you could speak a little bit more about how to go about, asking someone to be your mentor.
Yeah. So first, I just want to sort of acknowledge that it can be like hard. So I think in my heart, I'm an introvert, and I don't like talking to people really, but especially like I don't like asking for something like a mentorship relationship. So I guess, I think I think there's two ways to think about it. I think part of it is, as a institution, like a field or a college, we need to sort of build in supports to help people find those mentors, to make it easy to connect people who need a mentor, and people who are interested in being mentors. And the second piece is, I think the advice I would give to myself is, try to kind of beat down that introvertedness a little bit and put yourself out there and try to reach out and make those connections. You may find them in places you don't expect. Like you may not even realize you're being mentored. So in my first year as an assistant professor at the University of Illinois, senior professor, we would both get in early, and he'd come by my office and we'd chat for 15 minutes. And he was always talking about stuff he was doing, like administrative work, dealing with students. And what I realize now is that he was actually mentoring me and kind of feeding me information in a way to kind of help my own career. And I'm incredibly grateful that he did that. I'm still in touch with him. He's retired now. And so that's just to say, you may find mentorship in places you don't expect, and you may be mentored without knowing it. And so try to be on the lookout for those opportunities.
I wanted to mention something real quick too. I'm just hopping in. I was going to type it in the chat, but I think too that I find at higher ed institutions so often that that mentorship is seen as something that faculty do with students. And I've been rumbling around in my head in my work in the dean's office about how we share with students that mentors, that there are a lot of really great staff that would love to be mentors to students, and to perpetuate that more so that students aren't just looking at all kind of the usual suspects, which are really good suspects, but also that there's so many people that have higher ed backgrounds and lots to share and to learn. So again, in terms of extending our concentric circles out, I'm turning around thinking about ideas that we could maybe push that forward too, so that students know that there are lots of people that would love to be mentors and to engage in those kinds of relationships with them.
I think I'm going to jump into and just add that I've intentionally tried to connect people with people who could be their mentors, because they feel more comfortable coming to me sometimes than going directly to a professor or going directly. I was like, no, that's a great person. You absolutely should connect with them. I'm happy to write you a letter of introduction. And I think like most of us are. And so if there is someone you feel comfortable with, could you introduce me to this other person? I'm really interested in their work, but maybe a little bit shy about asking or whatever it is. But please do that, because we're more than happy to facilitate those introductions.
Mm-hmm. I want to add two things. One, Meaghan, I think you are absolutely right. I don't know, for those of you who may not know, Jackie was she passed away from cancer, I think about, Sharon, has it been like a year, 2 years, something like that? She was the janitor in Wyatt. I don't know if she cleaned other places, but she was an excellent mentor for me, because she's been at that place. She had been at that place like 20 years. And Sandra Udi, who is the teaching and learning financial person, she's another one who's an excellent mentor for me. You're talking about somebody with historical knowledge at this institution that has helped me navigate things. She's amazing. The second thing that I wanted to say is Hasina. So this, when students, because we're talking about how do you approach faculty or people, right? One of the things that I was always trained to do was to do my homework. So I would highly recommend that before you approach someone, you need to go and read their work. You need to like go and so when you go in and ask, or you know, whatever, ask them to be your mentor, be specific about what it is. So maybe you've noticed that they've gotten like 15 NSF grants and you want to apply for one of the graduate fellowship that NSF does, and you're not quite sure, then, you know, they're going to be responsive if you say, listen, I've read your CV. I've seen that you've gotten 15 grants. You've won them all. Clearly, you're outstanding in, you know, writing these things. And I'm going to be writing my first one. And I'm just wondering if you would like, you know, read it, like be specific. Because, you know, faculty can be a little snobbish. I mean, you know, we need to work on that. But also, they're busy. So to make sure you've done your homework so that you can like go with them with something specific, I think they'll be more likely to say yes.
And I would add, I ditto everything that Nicole just said. I would also add that social media has become another place to start building connections. So if you start to follow someone and start to engage in some conversation, it may not turn into a mentoring relationship, but it also might. And so that's another place to start making some of those connections.
Just to follow up on what Brenda said, I think that's absolutely true. I feel like there are people out there on Twitter who I know only through Twitter, and then I meet them at conferences. I'm like, I finally met you in person. In fact, a postdoc, I was able to connect a postdoc position with a candidate in the medical center through Twitter. So this person applied to work with me. I didn't have a space. Colleague in the med center needed someone just like that, and I put them together, and now she's here. So for me, I feel like social media is a way that I can connect with people that is easier for me personally as an introvert. So I definitely say take advantage of that.
Thank you. I'm just gonna move us forward to actually asking you one of the questions that was submitted from the student RSVPs, or from the RSVPs, and these are questions from students. One of them is, what does an ideal discussion in an ELA class look like? What is a good way to build a relationship with the conventional literary canon while also looking beyond it on the secondary level?
That question is bomb. Whoever asked that question.
I hope that they are here.
Yeah.
So yeah, Duane, however you want to.
Well, I can say that, well, I am not an expert in ELA, especially at the secondary level. So I don't want to say something that will get myself in trouble. But I can say that in my own experience, I'll say something, right? So in my own experiences teaching, especially something like language, where, you know, people have very fixed ideas about what language is and should be that don't often match with what language is in reality, right? So we all learn what proper English grammar is in English classrooms, but students come from a variety of backgrounds, a variety of dialects. And one of the things that I've tried to do in the classroom is to sort of acknowledge the fact that there are these two pieces and sort of generate discussion so that people can, you know, so that everyone's sort of identities, linguistic identities, can be respected. So I teach an intro to linguistics course, and one of the things that we spend a lot of time on is dialects. And I'm always amazed at the number of students who come into the class who don't know that all varieties of English are like legitimate languages. So African American Vernacular English, AVE, is a language with a system. It's not like a degraded form of English. People just don't know this. And I had a student in one of my, so we do things like have debates about what that means for all languages to be on the same footing. And I had a student last year who in their evaluation said, thanks, you know, I speak Ave. I had no idea that I wasn't just speaking bad English. And I feel like I actually really learned something meaningful to me personally in the classroom. And so I think it's sort of building a connection with sort of the curriculum that's out there, but in a way that's sort of respectful to folks' identities and pointing out problems with how our current curriculum is currently taught. So that's what I will say as a non-ELA expert.
Is there any additional, thank you, Duane. Is there any additional insight that other folks on the call may want to contribute? Well, thank you. So moving forward, Duane, I'm actually going to kind of do a little really small exercise I'm listing out some of your identifiers, and I want you to finish this sentence with any identifier or any identities that you have that I might have missed from this list. So Duane, you are a parent, a scholar, a researcher, a professor, an administrator, and blank.
Oh, wow. You know, I'm a psychologist, so I think in terms of like a Rorschach test or something. I would say a human being. I would add a musician, and I would add a multi-word phrase, open to learning more.
Okay, thank you. So where are you looking for guidance on how to adjust balancing your passions and responsibilities in this pandemic?
Yeah, so I think all of us are sort of in, this is a unique situation we're living in, right? Completely unprecedented in our lifetimes. And I have sort of a lot of different hats in my life. And I guess I didn't realize how sort of tenuously they were all situated until, you know, like a bowling ball came and sort of knocked them down, right? So I have these sort of professional roles. My spouse is also a faculty member in psychology. I have 4 kids. And so this past fall, when sort of the school shut down, you know, we were just trying to survive. And so we reached sort of a medium. And I guess I would say that I don't have any solution right now to give you or for myself. It's still sort of just kind of raw survival mode. You know, this morning I have twin kindergartners, and this morning I was sitting next to both of them as they were doing their online kindergarten class, like they're on headphones, and I'm trying to mute and unmute when the teacher's talking to them for both in parallel. And this is before like my like first coffee of the morning. So they're you know, it's sort of like juggling. But I will say one thing that has helped me is the kind of, well, 2 things. One is to just sort of like accept that I'm going to screw things up and it's okay. And that's hopefully something that I want to carry on even after this pandemic is over, right? Sort of giving yourself the grace to be like, hey, this is like a wild banana situation, and we're all just doing the best we can. And the second thing I would say is I'm trying to get better at saying no to things. So when people ask me to do things, just saying, yeah, I can't do it. My plate's full. So that's been sort of, I guess that's been the life lesson that I've taken out of the past 5 months.
No, absolutely. And I really appreciate you acknowledging that this is an evolving situation. So even what you do, like what might have worked for you in May and June might not be working in July and August, and there might be something completely new in September, right? Is there anything that you have done that maybe hasn't worked or you are continuing to wrestle with as you're trying to navigate this balance?
That is a great question. One thing that I think I found hasn't worked is sort of thinking I can do multiple things at once, which means, you know, I just sort of do everything poorly, which is okay. But one thing that my wife and I have just decided to do is sort of switch days on which we kind of are in charge of the kids. And that way, so one thing that I have garnered a greater appreciation for is being an academic. It's not just sort of the time to do it. You need time to kind of like sit with ideas and think about stuff. And so there's a little kid running in every 2 minutes, you know, it's totally out the window. And so my wife and I have just said, okay, she's got Wednesdays, I got Thursdays. And we try to put our sort of heavy thinking days, like thinking about grants, thinking about papers, thinking about how we're gonna do our teaching on those, you know, work days. And then, you know, the days we're watching the kids, we kind of, you know, I can answer emails, I can, you know, fill out a report, I can do kind of the lighter, less cognitive tasks. It took us like 3 months to kind of figure out this, the system, but I feel like we're in a pretty good spot now.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on this call who would maybe want to share some of the things that they've done that has worked for them or maybe not worked for them?
Would love to hear people's thoughts.
I think we need to start doing 45-minute Zooms instead of an hour Zoom, because you need that extra 15 minutes to like recharge. Like we should make that a standard. No more hour Zooms, like 45 minutes is the max. That's just my suggestion.
You know, I was sitting in my office one time and looking out the window. I was in my chair at my desk. And I had a student come to the door and say, well, I see you're doing nothing. May I come in? And I said, well, actually, I'm doing a lot. I'm sitting here thinking about a project that I'm working on, but come on in. And I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit and grace for time to think, that others do not see that as the productivity. And Duane, I was so glad you said, you know, we have to have that thinking space. It can't just be one thing right after the other. And for me, this time has been just overwhelmingly filled with, I mean, I had 9 Zoom meetings the other day. Then at night I had a function I had to go to. That was 10 hours on Zoom in one day. And yes, we ought to have 45-minute rules. I can't even, you know, I mean, I'll be honest, sometimes I just put my name up, you know, and mute and take my video off and run to the bathroom and hope that nobody asks me a question. I'm still listening, but I'm just hoping that I don't get a question during that time. And meals are a problem sometimes too with this. So I'm trying to learn a little more about saying no and some healthcare and taking time. And I don't know about you all, but I have sleep deprivation on certain days, and it's not just from Zoom meetings, it's from everything we're dealing with in the context of our world and our society. And it's only human nature that we are not necessarily functioning at the optimal levels given the stress on our humanity. So I don't have answers, but I'm trying to work on it and give myself some grace in all of this process. And if I don't, you know, I'm doing the best I can every single day. And my best on one day may not be the best I can give on another.
Thank you for that, Sharon. I'm over here just snapping and clapping away because you hit a lot of really important points, especially talking about those layers of the stress and grieving and trauma that we're experiencing, being, you know, tuned into what's going on in our country right now and globally, you know. So those are things that are impacting us. And
yes, and I would recommend to all of you Michelle Obama's podcast. she has now talked a lot about this depression that is kind of a blanket of depression because of all of the things that folks are enduring. And, you know, it affects different groups differently, how we identify in our society and what we are thinking about. And I do want to say one thing about mentorship, if I could, and that is sometimes it really is a connection that you start to feel. And mentorship is a reciprocal relationship that not only talking about the products you want to create or the academic work you want to, but you mentioned with Duane, you asked the question, and how are you living out your passion? And I think we need mentors that help us to affirm our passions, to help us think about the path that we're really on. And is that, are we loving this work? Are we feeling like we are in the gap that brings us great joy as we are seeing great need in the world? And what is a meaningful life to us in our vocations? And so mentorship, I can tell you that sometimes when I have mentored with students, I get more out of it than I think they do, because it challenges me to think about my path, my journey, what I'm thinking, and am I really doing the work that I want to do? And am I thinking about bigger issues or things that, you know, the student brings to the table that I had just never thought about before? And so I find them to be very reciprocal and just really good. It's that truth, but good relational connection. And having a variety of mentors is so important.
I could not agree more. And I think that also ties into what Dr. Joseph was saying about researching prior to contacting someone who you think would be a good mentor or supervisor for you too, because that's one of the initial ways that you can find out, like, oh, this person has done something really interesting that we can both, you know, challenge each other on, have insight on with each other. I think, you know, just tying in that point of, you know, you can find out this information prior to reaching out or meeting with whoever you think would be a good mentor for you. So thank you for that. And also I want to point out too, like that the notion of I'm going to say reimagining, but reimagining or restructuring what we think of productivity is something I think that's also been at the forefront of this time as well. And I definitely hear that as a part of the layers to consider when you're thinking of balance, right? Or when you're thinking of how to manage everything. So with 4 minutes left, I have one more question for you, Duane, and know that, you know, this is open for insight and ideas from everybody on the call. But I just want to end with asking, you know, or saying that I operate with the understanding that times of great challenge also presents time for great innovation. So in what ways are you channeling creativity going into the school year, Duane?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the process of having to adapt to the current reality has been actually weird to say. It's been really helpful for both my research and my teaching. So research-wise, we just got a NIH grant to study reading abilities in adolescents and adults in the community, and see to what extent people's reading skill is influenced by what they read on the internet. So if you read like the Wall Street Journal versus reading TMZ, does that predict how good of a learner, how good of a language reader you're going to be? And, you know, our initial plan was to do this in the lab, bring people in. Can't do that. But now we're sort of developing online tools to get measurements of what people are reading online, but then also having them do our lab tasks. And this is actually going to be, I hope, will be actually really beneficial because now we can get way more participation from lots more different types of people than if we were just trying to get folks to come into the lab. So research-wise, I think this has sort of forced us, our team, to kind of be more resourceful. And I'd say teaching-wise, I think I've really had to sort of re-examine how I teach my courses and think about how to realign them for a online format. And I think that realignment is going to make them better courses. So I'm sort of moving away from just like testing people, which I like because it's easy, to making projects more project-based, where there's sort of more one-on-one time and sort of semester-long work on creating, they're going to be doing experiments on bilinguals or people who are listening to bilinguals. And so I've had a lot of fun just sort of developing this course. And I think my hope is that I can take what I've done and use it even after the pandemic, but we will see.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to ways they're accessing their creativity going into this fall semester?
I'll just jump in quickly. I've had to learn Brightspace, and we've done our whole virtual orientation on it. And I went through the Center for Teaching's online course Design Institute, which is fabulous. Like, I learned so much, and it makes me miss being in the classroom and teaching. And it's been fun to be able to be creative in Brightspace, but also since I do co-curricular engagement, we're trying to come up with new ways to engage students that are going to make them want to hop onto one more Zoom, right? And so lots of creativity there. And I'll give a shout out to Hasina for creating this, because this has been a really successful, wonderful program this summer. So hats off to, good job, Hasina. So yeah, lots of creativity as we think about moving forward. And we are all ears for ideas of things that you all can think about to do that very thing, because it's challenging, but it's also, like you said, time for innovation and a dangerous opportunity for us to all grow and to try new things. So.
And thank you for all of you for being here. Alyssa, you did an amazing job facilitating. Thank you so much. Duane, it was so great to have you here and to hear like the different parts of your story that we don't always share. And I think thank you for everyone who participated in the conversation. I think the conversation was fantastic, both the questions and the answers. So thank you all for your participation. It is being recorded, so we will have those links up soon. We're having a website redesign. So all of that has happened all at once. So thank you again for being here. And hopefully we will let you know when we have our sessions for the fall come up. So thank you.